Hello, it's Austin from Voltage, and today we're going to be walking through and talking through the DIY Lightning checklist by Voltage. And now what this is a lot of people, they ask us when we're talking through sales, when we're talking through Lightning solutions, they ask us, what if we just wanted to do this ourselves and not go with Voltage, right? And so we made this kind of high-level checklist for what you would want to do in order to have an enterprise-grade Lightning Network DIY setup, right? So the standards are going to be pretty high here. We're calling it enterprise-grade. We would try and put you, I guess, at parity with what Voltage offers. And these checkpoints are also pretty high level. There's a lot of room for interpretation for them. But yeah, I think this is kind of fun. It's just a high level. Here's what it takes to get on par with Voltage's enterprise grade Lightning solution. So let's walk through it and talk through it and give a little bit of nuance and color. And I think that will be fun. Cool. So let's start with infrastructure setup at the top here. So you've got procure and configure high performance server hardware. This first point, let's actually zoom in a little bit here. Cool. So this is going to be basic server stuff. This is going to be your basic spinning up of a new server, a cloud server. Maybe you have physical servers. That is all good. But yeah, nothing special or complicated here. Let's move on to set up multiple Lightning nodes for redundancy and reliability. And so in this point, multiple can mean literally having another node, another backup node, or it can be that you do database duplication and backup duplication in such a way to where maybe your Lightning node goes down and a minute later you're able to spin up the same node on a different server because you have those high available backups. So that's another option for a backup, but having two nodes is simple and just fine as well. We've got set up at least one Bitcoin full node to use as a Lightning node data source. And so on this point, really you need the Bitcoin data source. So this does not necessarily have to be a full node that you can configure, run on your server. This can be a Bitcoin data source from a third-party API provider or something like that. Or maybe there's reasons you want to run multiple Bitcoin nodes, right? This point can be pretty flexible. It's just that your Lightning node needs to be powered by a Bitcoin data source in some kind of way. Okay, down to network configuration. We've got establish and maintain connection to a Bitcoin full node from Lightning nodes. And so this is just going to be the standard process of setting up a Lightning node for the first time and connecting it to your Bitcoin data source. It should be pretty quick setup and pretty easy to tell if things are working and connected or not. We've got connect to the Lightning network and find peers to open channels with. And so this point can be a little bit difficult. You want to be careful with who you open up channels with. You want to be a little bit adversarial, especially if you're a startup, especially if you're an organization. So you're going to want to have some friends, some peers, some players in the space that you can connect with and maybe open up channels with at first. I think that's the best scenario. And at the very least, you want to be very careful vetting who your potential channel partners might be, right? So you're kind of going to want to make a plan. Who are you going to connect to? Maybe how much liquidity, and then you're going to open Lightning channels with optimal capacity. So this is just going to, at first, it's just going to be probably as much capacity as you need for your proof of concept to get things running, to get things working. And that's a pretty valid network configuration right there. And so liquidity management is next. This is a fun one. We've got developed strategies for efficient capital allocation across channels. This is something that you will be doing continually over time, but it's a good pull-up point to start with because you're going to want to start with this mindset of beginning to develop a strategy, paying attention to the inner workings of your liquidity. And across time, updating and iterating on this strategy will probably make things much easier and much cheaper for you. Set up real-time liquidity monitoring is next. And so this is where at first, mostly you want to monitor this liquidity to make sure it stays in good enough balance to continue servicing payments and forwards at the very least. This doesn't need to be fancy at first, but maybe just a ping whenever you get to a certain threshold of inbound or outbound is a very valid strategy. We've got manage inbound and outbound liquidity to ensure transaction flow. So this is also a difficult one. You really need to understand how servicing payments and routing is really affecting your liquidity over time. So this is another thing that's going to be a part of your strategy. It's going to be consideration that you're paying attention to over time. And as you pay attention, hopefully you will be able to implement automated and manual channel management and rebalancing strategies. So it very much will not be automated at first, but you might find that there is something like a loop in once a week or something like that. That's, an automated process that you're going to be able to set up. So those exist, but at first, most likely going to be manual. Okay, security implementation. We've got design and deploy robust security protocols for node protection. Fancy way of saying set up your application securely, right? Secure your server environment. Make sure that all the checks and balances are in place. Don't need to get too custom here at the first layer. Just have good application security. And from there, we get into implement access control management for admin node access. So at least the node implementation that we use, LND, they have a pretty good access credential system inside called macaroons. So you can have credentials for admins, or maybe for members of the org, they can just read in data from the node. So that's easy to set up within the node, but of course having the system for generating those credentials, passing them on, revoking them, that's where things get a little less simple. So that is important. And then just conduct regular security audits and pen testing. Just make sure that your setup is secure over time. Security holds are introduced over time. Security reduces over time. So pretty solid and simple system. If you have it done right, you should be pretty good. Okay, monitoring and maintenance. Got developed 24/7 monitoring systems for node health and performance. And so this might just be something like traditional server monitoring for like high availability, redundant infrastructure. So hopefully this is stuff that you're somewhat familiar with. Nothing fancy here. We've got create alerts for channel issues, potential attacks, or network anomalies. This is something very likely you won't be able to have automated alerts for at the beginning. Probably for channel issues, but potential attacks, network anomalies, you can probably find attacks if they're like DDoS attacks, but if they're network level lightning attacks or network level anomalies, these are things that are going to be hard to catch. So this is where we go into the next point, which is important. Maintain at least one engineer for round-the-clock incident response. Really, almost all of these points where we say automated to some capacity, you might decide to replace that with manual labor, with someone who is responsible and ready to respond. So at first, almost no matter what, that is going to be a person that you're going to want to have. Compliance and regulatory adherence. So research and implement necessary compliance measures for Lightning operations. At first, this is really just going to be getting a lay of the land, understanding the regulatory space. This very much depends on where you are at. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of consideration here. There's a lot I could say, but you have a compliance team. Hopefully this is a long journey that everyone has to walk through, depending on how you're using Lightning, how you're servicing customers. So yes, do not skimp on this piece at all. We've got stay updated with evolving regulations in different jurisdictions. It is likely the case that, regulations will continue to evolve, especially as Lightning and Bitcoin grows. And we've got maintain proper documentation for auditing purposes. So maybe you're SOC 2 compliant or something like that, in which case documentation will be required. But either way, it is important. There is open source documentation that you can pull from and iterate on yourself just to get started. But yeah, not too much to say on these pieces. I'm not a lawyer. Okay, performance optimization. Continuously analyze and improve routing efficiency. And so this is something that you won't be able to do at first, but just from the beginning, you want to look out and start paying attention to failed payments and why they're failing. And if they're failing for routing reasons, that's usually the reason. There you go. You know that you need to maybe deploy more liquidity, or perhaps deploy channels to different nodes on the network. Okay, optimize fee strategies to balance profitability and competitiveness. And so at the very least, you want to optimize your Lightning channel fees to not get drained from routing, right? And maybe you're not even trying to route. Maybe you have unannounced channels, but those fees will help protect your liquidity and will make sure that they are priced. And also on the payment side, when you are paying out of your node, you want to be very careful with fees and make sure that you set a max fee, because people can do tricky things on the network where they try to have you take certain routes to get to them, and then they siphon your fees away if you don't set that max fee. So that's something you want to look out for. We've got regularly upgrade node software to leverage the latest Lightning protocol improvements, right? So you might be using LND, that is what Voltage is using, and there are pretty regular updates, software updates. And so that process needs to be walked through just like any other software. Integration and API development. So create robust APIs for seamless integration with existing systems. So, everything that Lightning needs to touch internal or via third parties within your org, that's probably going to need to have some kind of custom implementation. So that's something you're going to have to look out for and prepare for. We've got develop interfaces for external services and payment processors. Bouncing off the last point a little bit, similar idea. What kind of APIs, what kind of interfaces, integrations do you need to have with your current partners that might involve Lightning? The more minimal that is, obviously, the easier it is at first. But yeah, so ensure compatibility with various Lightning wallets, services, and APIs. This can be one of the most difficult points depending on what you're doing. If you're starting with a simple integration with a simple use case at first, this won't be so bad. But if you're trying to be in the middle of this, marketplace of all these different wallets and services, you're going to have to adhere to some protocols that might not come out of the box, or there might be protocols that they're special that users want to use. And so a big call out for this one would be LNURL or Lightning address, which is a way of having very easy readable addresses on Lightning. And so this is a very common spec that's not going to come out of the box. But if you're trying to interoperate with the rest of the network, you might have trouble if you don't have this feature implemented. So that's kind of an example of that piece. Okay, almost at the bottom here, disaster recovery plan or planning. Implement comprehensive backup solutions for channel states and node data. This is super important. Your server could just blow up. It could be blown to smithereens, potentially. And in that scenario, you want to be able to not only quickly recover your Lightning node, but just be able to do it at all, to be able to recover your funds. The channel state, the channel backup state is absolutely crucial for that. This is something that you need to maintain and check on. This is your backup key to the safe if you lose the original. So this is very important. Definitely don't skimp on this. After that, we have develop and regularly test recovery procedures for various failure scenarios. Yeah, and this is good to do at least once, is to do a full node recovery and just see that you can do it, see that everything's there, and that you can, go back and you're all good and nothing has blown up. Okay, ongoing costs and resource allocation. Cool, so this was just the cost to this we put at the bottom. Allocate substantial budget for hardware, software, personnel, security compliance, potentially 250K to 400K. And then we've got dedicated engineering resources for continuous development and maintenance. Yeah, so it's a lot. Like I said, a lot of these things where we say automated or some of these fancier workflows, integrations, at first, these are things you might just replace with manual labor. You might have a guy, you might have a team of guys that are just covering these use cases at first, and then maybe you develop processes over time to help automate this. But either way, it is expensive. It is not an easy trail to walk necessarily, but this is a pretty good high-level overview of the enterprise-grade Lightning Network DIY setup. But yes, thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful. Once again, I'm Austin at Voltage. Reach out if you have any questions, and I'm happy to talk about any of this stuff anytime. So cheers, until next time.